This happened about a month ago. I'm 36 years old and work as a systems engineer for the Navy, mainly overseeing technology on nuclear submarines. They needed someone to offer an outside perspective on a new submarine, and I jumped at the chance despite the rumors I had heard about it. The atmosphere was so different from my sunny office environment. The moment I stepped inside the sub, the cold, metallic corridors surrounded me. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. I felt a thrill of excitement to be part of military innovation. But soon, I started noticing things. There were flickers on the screens that didn't seem right. Odd mechanical sounds echoed through the tightly packed space. I thought it was just my imagination. Days went by, and I dismissed the disturbances. A slight glitch here, a buzz there. It wasn't unusual for an experimental craft. Then, there was the night the comms system went haywire. I was about to report my findings when I heard whispers through the radio. I thought it was a weak signal, static rolling through, but it felt unsettling. I shrugged it off. Maybe someone was just playing tricks. But the crew members began to fall ill. Some experienced headaches, while others complained of dizziness. They had no idea why. I asked them about it, but they just brushed me off with nervous smiles. It still felt off, but I focused on my work. As I wandered through the halls one evening, I caught snippets of conversations among the crew. They whispered about shadows they claimed were lurking near vital control rooms. I tried to interject, but they just looked at me with wide eyes and changed the subject. I began to sense that something was wrong. The next day, I found a stack of documents in the control room. They detailed previous missions of this sub. I was shocked to read about strange occurrences, other engineers going missing, equipment failures that were never explained. It seemed the sub had a history that was buried deep. I wanted to confront someone, but each crew member seemed more distant. They spoke of haunting visions, of echoes in the night. They all shared a fear that gripped them tight. I felt my own heart racing as the pieces began to connect. Their behavior grew more erratic. One night, while I worked late, I heard footsteps behind me, but when I turned, nobody was there. Then crew members began disappearing. One by one, they vanished without a trace. The atmosphere turned suffocating. I tried to convince myself it was all a mistake. But I kept hearing hushed voices and odd noises. My mind spun with confusion. Every time I thought I had a grip on reality, something slipped away. I began doubting if the submarine was malfunctioning or if something darker was at play. I felt trapped. Then a voice echoed through the corridor, cold and distinct, "Come find us, Tom." My heart pounded. Did it come from the shadow lurking just beyond my line of sight? The next morning, I decided enough was enough. I needed answers. The other engineers had all but disappeared, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was targeting them. I went to the control room, determined to dig deeper. As I sifted through the remaining documents, my heart raced. That's when I saw a report detailing the last known movements of a crew member who had vanished. His name was Jake, and according to the log, he was last seen near the reactor room. My stomach twisted. The reactor room was off limits unless you were authorized. I wasn't, but I felt a pull to go there anyway. That I glanced around the empty control room. I could hear my own breath, the silence oppressive. I knew I was taking a risk, but the urgency within me was stronger than my fear. I followed the narrow hallways, the metallic walls closing in as I approached the reactor section. Each step felt deliberate, weighted. When I reached the door, it was slightly ajar. I hesitated. The faint glow from inside flickered like an ember. I pushed it open, and an icy rush of air hit me. The lights in the room pulsed, casting long shadows. I stepped inside, my senses heightened. The reactor hummed ominously, but what caught my eye was the mess of tools strewn across the floor. They were familiar. Jake had mentioned using some of them in our discussions. Why were they here? And where was he? I called out softly, "Jake." There was no response. Just the low whir of machinery. The shadows in the corner seemed to shift as if something was still lingering there. I took a step closer, feeling unsteady on my feet. My heart raced, and I could hear the sound of my own pulse. Then, I noticed something beneath the control panel. It was a small, cracked tablet. As I crouched to pick it up, a chill ran down my spine. Its screen lit up, revealing a series of videos, grainy footage displaying crew members, including Jake, looking terrified. They were talking about hearing strange noises, voices in the walls, shadows moving near the reactor. I pressed play on the most recent video. Jake's face appeared, panic in his eyes. "If you find this, get out. It's not safe. The submarine, it's alive." The video cut off abruptly. Suddenly, I heard a loud crash from behind me. I whipped around, adrenaline surging. The door slammed shut, sealing me in the dark room. My heart skipped a beat as whispers filled the air once more, the same phrase echoing, "Come find us, Tom." Panic gnawed at me. Something was here with me, and I was running out of time. I needed to escape before it was too late. My hands trembled as I scanned the room, desperate for an escape. The dim light flickered, casting anxious shadows that danced with every hum from the reactor. The whispers grew louder, pressing against my ears. I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare, every muscle in my body screaming to run. With no choice, I raced toward the control panel, hoping there was a way to open the door from inside. The buttons felt foreign, cold beneath my fingers. I started pressing random combinations, the urgency sharp in my mind. Sweat dripped down my back as the whispers turned to sobbing, a collective sound pulling at my resolve. Suddenly, I heard a clattering behind me, a tool crashing to the floor, followed by what sounded like footsteps. My heart pounded, and I spun around to face the shadows. There, just at the edge of the light, I saw it, a figure, half hidden. I couldn't make out any features, but the silhouette felt wrong, like something out of a horror film. "Who is there?" I called, my voice trembling despite my effort to sound strong. No answer, just an unsettling silence. I forced myself to take one step forward, then another. The figure didn't move. In fact, it felt as if the air thickened around me, slowing my approach, trapping me in the moment like a fly caught in a web. Desperate, I turned back to the control panel and pressed down hard on the emergency release button. A loud alarm rang out, drowning out the whispers, but I didn't care. I shoved at the door with all my strength. It swung open, revealing the narrow hallway behind it. I bolted out into the corridor, the sound of my footsteps echoing off the metal walls. I didn't dare look back. Instead, I ran, my mind reeling with questions. Had Jake been right? Was the submarine more than just metal and machinery? As I turned the corner, I stumbled upon a room labeled "Engineering Logs." I skidded to a halt, heart racing. My instincts told me to grab anything valuable. I pushed the door open and flicked on the light, illuminating stacks of paperwork and more of those damned tools. They were all familiar again, but what caught my eye was a wall covered in scribbled notes. In the center, a giant map of the submarine highlighted crucial areas: the reactor, the control room, and most alarmingly, a section marked hazard zone. My breath hitched as I read further. Underneath, it said, "Avoid. Engage at your own risk." Whoever had written this had known something. They had experienced something that I turned to leave, but as soon as I did, the lights flickered, then went out completely. Panic surged again, that same cold grip tightening around my chest. In the darkness, I heard it. The whispering returned, clearer this time. "Help us at once to let you leave." My blood ran cold. No longer was it about finding Jake. Now, it was about surviving whatever was haunting this vessel. I stood frozen in the dark, my heart thundering in my chest. The whispers grew desperate, echoing around me, mixing with the distant hum of the reactor. I could feel the air thickening, pressing down on me. The urgency to escape surged inside me, but I couldn't just leave. Not without knowing what happened here. Stay calm, I whispered to myself, drawing in a shaky breath. I needed light. I fumbled through my pockets until my fingers brushed against my flashlight. It flickered to life, casting a pale beam into the surrounding darkness. As I scanned the room again, shadows formed unsettling shapes. I tried to shake off the feeling of being watched. The map on the wall flashed in my mind, urging me to delve deeper. Something was off about that hazard zone. I turned back towards the door I had just entered. But as I stepped through the threshold, a sound stopped me cold. There was movement, faint but unmistakable. Someone or something could be lurking nearby. My grip tightened around the flashlight. Show yourself. I cried, more bravado than confidence. The darkness swallowed my words, silencing them like they never existed at all. Just then, I heard something rustling beyond the room. Was it a person? I took a cautious step forward, my feet barely making a sound against the metal floor. The flashlight beam bounced along the walls, illuminating vague outlines of machinery, but nothing that resembled a living being. Then the whispers resurfaced, louder and more frantic. Their coming, it felt like the words wrapped around me, squeezing tighter. My instincts screamed at me to turn and run, but I needed answers. I crept closer to the noise. It was coming from the direction of the reactor room. My curiosity almost got the better of me, but dread rooted me in place. Finally, pushing the discomfort aside, I moved slowly toward the door leading to the reactor. As I reached for the handle, the door swung open on its own, revealing a darkened interior. The reactor room was ominous, the humming sound growing ever louder, as if it were alive. I could see the glow of the reactor lights flickering like dying stars. Jake. I called. My voice echoed back, mingling with the soft whispers that filled the room. But there was still no reply. I stepped inside, shining the light around. And that's when I saw it. A figure stood silhouetted against the reactor's glow, still and unmoving. My heart transitioned from fear to a chilling recognition. This wasn't just any figure. It was unmistakably Jake. Jake! I shouted, but he didn't respond. It felt like I was speaking to a statue, cold and resistant. I took a step closer, half expecting him to turn around, but instead, he just stood there, staring blankly at the reactor. A creeping sense of dread settled into my bones. What happened to you? I whispered. The whispers grew louder, merging with my desperation. Then, in a chilling moment, I connected the dots, the map, the warnings, and Jake's silence. Something wasn't right. I knew I had to get to him before it was too late. But as I moved closer, a surge of energy pulsed through the room, making the lights strobe erratically. Time stretched, suspended in terror. My instincts screamed at me to flee. I realized I wasn't just here to find Jake. I had awoken something below the surface. And now, it wanted me too. The air crackled around me. I took a step back, my mind racing. Jake stood there, not a single blink, not a single sign of life. It felt wrong. Everything about the reactor room felt wrong. The steady hum combined with the pulsating lights was like a heartbeat, and I wondered what it was beating for. Jake, please. I shouted again. My voice felt small amid the chaos, but I had to reach him. I needed to snap him out of whatever trance he was in. I moved closer, the beam of the flashlight slicing through the shadows, searching for something, some clue, some answer. As I reached for his arm, a loud clang echoed from the interior of the reactor. It ripped my focus away from Jake. My heart raced again as I swung the flashlight in the direction of the sound. The darkness seemed to pulse and breathe. I could feel my throat tightening. Hello. I called, the words escaping as a strangled whisper. Silence met my inquiry, heavy and uncomfortable. Then, a low rumble from the reactor sent vibrations through the floor, making my teeth rattle. I turned back to Jake. There was an intensity in his gaze now, fixed but distant, as if he could see something I couldn't. Jake, it's me. I pleaded, desperate frustration mixed with fear. Just then, I noticed something on the ground, a twisted piece of metal. It was familiar. I picked it up, examining the jagged edges. It didn't belong here. A flash of memory hit me, the map. The hazard zone had marked a section that was now at the center of my attention. Before I could process what this meant, Jake shuddered violently, as if a shockwave had coursed through him. His body jerked, and the faint flicker of awareness returned to his eyes. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered, voice raspy. "You need to leave." "Jake, what happened to you? What is going on?" But before he could reply, the reactor roared, and the lights dimmed, casting us into an inky blackness. I stumbled back, grappling with the flashlight, trying to keep my footing. My pulse thundered in my ears. A spotlight flashed on, illuminating something behind Jake. I froze as a shadow moved, darting toward me. My instincts kicked in. "Get down!" I shouted, shoving Jake out of the way just as a massive shape lunged. The impact slammed into my shoulder, sending me crashing against the cold metal wall. Stars exploded in my vision. I struggled to catch my breath as I looked up. It was not a person. Something grotesque, an amalgamation of machinery and flesh, loomed over me, eyes glinting with malice. "Run!" Jake screamed. Before I could even react, I felt hands grasping at my limbs, pulling me toward the reactor's maw. Panic surged through me. "No! Let me go!" I fought against the pull, but the creature was too strong. It hissed and snarled, its breath reeking of metal and decay. I twisted with all my might, clawing for anything solid to hold on to, and when I saw it, a flickering control panel nearby, the screen illuminating emergency lights that chased away some of the darkness. With every ounce of strength, I launched myself towards it, hoping to find salvation before the whispers turned into screams. But as I reached for the panel, the lights flickered and plunged both me and Jake into deeper shadows. I didn't know if I could find a way out of this nightmare. The whispers grew again, filling my mind with warnings a new threat was emerging. I lunged for the control panel, fingers brushing against the cold, unyielding surface. My heart raced as I yanked at the emergency switch. Nothing happened. I cursed under my breath, the creature still tugging at me, its grip like iron. I opened my mouth to scream, but fear swallowed the sound. "Jake!" I shouted instead, my voice barely rising above the chaos. "Help me!" I felt a jolt as the creature let go for a split second, distracted by the feeble light of the control panel. Jake staggered to his feet, his face pale and drawn. The clarity in his eyes flashed like lightning, and then it faded again. "Get to the panel," he urged, his voice cracking. "Override the system." I nodded, though my stomach twisted at the urgency. I pressed buttons frantically, desperate to regain control, but nothing responded. My hands trembled as I felt the fear gripping me like a vice. Behind me, the creature snarled, its shadow shifting unpredictably, a grotesque blend of technology and something ancient. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to turn and flee, but my legs were glued to the floor. I couldn't let Jake down. A sudden beep from the control panel made my heart skip. I seared my gaze onto the screen. Was it working? A warning light flickered, indicating a security breach. As the noise escalated, a red light flashed, illuminating the room in desperate urgency. "Jake, I think I'm getting through," I yelled, hope clawing its way back, but before Jake could react, the reactor shuddered again, and alarms began to blare, drowning out everything else. The creature snarled in rage, its clawed hands swiped at me again. I ducked, narrowly avoiding the razor-like edge that could have ended me. Just then, a series of loud explosions echoed from deep within the reactor, like thunder rumbling through the earth. The walls shook, and debris rained down around us. "We have to move," Jake shouted, frantically glancing around the room. "I almost have it," I replied, focusing on the flashing lights, frantically pressing buttons that fed my overwhelming anxiety. Another explosion rocked the reactor, and the floor beneath us cracked. I felt the heat of the creature's breath envelop my back. The lights flickered again as the emergency controls struggled to do their job. I had to find a way to subdue this thing. I couldn't just run. "Jake, I'm initiating the lockdown sequence," I yelled, my hands shaking over the panel. "Cover me." With a swift motion, I flipped a switch. The alarms started their countdown, but even as they blared, I sensed the change in the air. The creature paused, its eyes narrowing, then, a piercing shriek erupted, and I turned. An even larger shadow surged into view, drawn by the wave of energy. I recognized the eyes, gluttonous and furious. "No!" I cried out. "They're coming!" Jake yelled, eyes wide with fear. I had initiated something bigger, something that now threatened both of us. The sensations grew, rippling through the reactor, intertwining with darkness. The whispers morphed into a cacophony, drowning out my thoughts and forcing my mind into overdrive. Panic surged through me anew. I had only seconds before whatever was lurking would be upon us. "We need to escape. Move!" I shouted, the urgency pouring into each syllable that I turned, hoping to find an exit, but the creature was blocking our path, and shadows were closing in fast. The countdown continued, mixing urgent beeps with screams that felt all too real. "Run!" I screamed, not knowing who I was shouting for anymore. The reactor roared to life, the very foundation shaking as reality blurred into chaos around us. I had opened a door to something far more dangerous, something that wouldn't let us leave so easily. The moment I screamed, I felt the air shift around us, as if it were heavy with dread. Jake dashed to my side, his voice strained. "This way." He pointed towards a narrow opening on the opposite side of the control room, but the creature was still in the way, eyes glowing like a predator's. In the dark that I stood frozen for a heartbeat, my mind racing. The sirens wailed like banshees, and the lights above us stuttered, dimming to a sickly glow. I grabbed Jake's arm. "We'll never fit through there. Just follow me," he shouted back, pulling me along. I didn't have time to argue. We darted toward the narrow space, dodging the shattered debris littering the floor. The creature let out a ghastly screech, and a surge of panic propelled us forward. It felt like the ground itself wanted to swallow us whole. As we reached the opening, I squeezed through first, pushing myself into a dark hallway lined with metal panels that hummed ominously. I felt a jarring jolt as Jake followed closely behind. We stumbled forward into a larger compartment, one that was dimly lit but mercifully free of immediate threats. "Where are we?" I gasped, scanning the space. The walls were adorned with gauges and mysterious machinery, some flickering with life. It was cramped but looked less like a battleground than the control room. "Only one way to find out," Jake said, his voice shaky but firm. I could still feel our previous room vibrating with chaos. The creature had not followed us through the corridor, yet I couldn't shake the sense that it was merely biding its time. I moved cautiously, stepping over fallen tools and debris that made the air heavy with dust and danger. "Jake, help me with this." My voice trembled as I leaned closer to a panel embedded in the wall. "It looks like a control unit. Be careful," he cautioned, watching the entrance nervously. "We don't know what else could be lurking." I nodded, though I felt a twitch of defiance. Fear coursed through me, but I had to fight it. I began to press buttons on the panel, hoping for anything that could help us. Nothing. My heart sank as the screen blinked with errors. "Let me try," Jake said, urgency creeping into his tone. He stepped in next to me, tapping at the controls with more determination than I felt. I couldn't help but glance over my shoulder, half expecting the creature to burst through the shadows, and then, as Jake continued to fumble with the panel, a low rumble echoed from the depths of the submarine. The lights flickered wildly, and a deep voice emanated from somewhere below. "Containment breached. Evacuate immediately." A chill washed over me. What is happening? My mind raced at the implication of the warning. I have no idea. Jake shouted back, frustrated. He pressed a few more buttons, and the panel screamed in protest that I felt an ominous sense of urgency gripping me as the air grew colder, and my pulse quickened. What if we can't find a way out? I whispered the thought that had settled in my gut, feeling the panic rise again. Then we fight back, Jake replied with determination, his eyes locking onto mine. Just as I met his gaze, a loud crash echoed through the compartment, causing us both to jump. That was when I saw a flicker of movement in the shadows behind Jake, a shape far more menacing than the one we had seen earlier. The darkness shifted, and I knew we were not entirely alone. Jake, look out! I shouted, the urgency in my voice lighting a fire under our feet. The moment I shouted, Jake spun around, eyes wide. Too late. The creature lunged, its grotesque form emerging from the darkness like a twisted nightmare. I barely had time to breathe before everything exploded into chaos. Jake reacted instinctively, pushing me behind him. Get back! He yelled, grabbing a metal wrench from the floor and swinging it at the beast. The monster recoiled but didn't back down, snarling as it revealed teeth that seemed sharper than knives that I felt my heart race. I wanted to help, but fear glued my feet to the ground. The room pulsed with an almost palpable dread that clawed at my insides. What is that thing? I managed to choke out. No time for questions. Jake shouted, his voice rising over the creature's low growls. He swung the wrench again, this time catching it across the head. The creature hissed, reeling backward, but I could see it was enraged, its focus now locked on Jake that I knew we couldn't fight it like this. Jake, the panel. I gestured toward the control panel we had been trying to use. Maybe we can disable something, create a distraction. Right. He didn't hesitate. He mustered every ounce of courage and kicked backward, darting toward the panel while keeping his eyes on the creature. I followed close behind, adrenaline pushing me forward against my instincts. As Jake fumbled with the controls, a deafening roar erupted around us, rattling the very metal that enclosed us. The lights flickered ominously, casting erratic shadows across the walls. I watched in horror as the creature surged forward, lunging at Jake just as he slammed a large button. That a deafening siren filled the room, piercing through the chaos and drowning out everything else. Alarms blared, and a red light began flashing, illuminating the creature's eyes with an unholy glow. It hesitated, confused by the sudden onslaught of noise. Now! I yelled, tugging at Jake's arm. We turned together, sprinting away from the threat, hoping the sound would buy us time. We didn't stop to look back, rushing down another corridor that branched off to the side. That we ran until we reached an airtight door. I slammed my palm against the control panel beside it, desperate for it to open. Come on, come on. Jake pressed his shoulder against the door, glancing behind us, anxiety etched on his face. Do you think it will follow us? I don't know, I panted, still trying to catch my breath. But we can't stay here. My fingers danced over the panel, frantically pressing buttons, but nothing responded. The door refused to budge. Then, I saw something through the small observation window, a faint glow, a sickly shade of green flickering in the water beyond. I squinted, trying to understand what it was. That was when I realized with cold certainty, we were deep underwater, trapped in the belly of a beast of a different kind. The alarms continued to wail, but the glow outside pulsed rhythmically, almost inviting. I felt a chill go down my spine as an unsettling thought crept into my mind. Jake, I whispered, my voice trembling, it's not just one creature, is it? Before he could respond, the ground shook violently beneath our feet. The door rattled as if something was trying to break through from the other side. Stay back. I warned, instinctively pushing Jake away. The creature had found us again, and this time we were out of time. The door buckled as another violent impact rattled our surroundings. I could almost feel the metal fibers beneath my skin vibrating with tension. My breath hitched in my throat, and I glanced at Jake, fear mirrored in his wide eyes. We had no time to think. Jake! I shouted over the noise. We need to get out. Now. In that moment, I regretted not finding a map or an emergency protocol before all this chaos. I slammed my palm on the panel again. Is there another way out? Jake looked frantically around us. There has to be. He pointed down the corridor. What about that tunnel? It looks like it leads to somewhere else. I squinted into the murky darkness. Just visible through the flickering lights was a narrow, cramped passage that twisted away into the unknown. Do you think it's safe? I asked. Jake shook his head, urgency pushing him forward. Safer than waiting here. We don't have time to debate. Before he could second-guess himself, he motioned for me to follow and began sprinting toward the passage. I followed closely, the loud alarm still ringing in my ears. Another crash reverberated through the door, and I stumbled. I could picture the creature, relentless and ferocious, closing in on us. The air grew colder as we crept into the tunnel. My heart raced, not just from fear but from anticipation. Are you sure this is the right way? I whispered, beginning to doubt. They wouldn't have a tunnel if it didn't lead somewhere, he insisted, glancing back as we moved deeper into the shadows. The glow from the observation window, now far behind us, diminished to nothing, leaving us enveloped in darkness. Suddenly, one of the walls shimmered with the same sickly green hue that flickered outside. I stopped walking, drawn to it. Jake, look. He hesitated, caught between curiosity and caution. What is it? I don't know, but it looks alive. My heart pounded unevenly as I reached out, the glow illuminating my hand. The surface felt smooth and warm, pulsating gently beneath my fingers. Don't touch it. Jake gasped, catching my wrist just in time. It could be dangerous. Maybe it's a way out. My mind spun with possibilities. What if it was some kind of escape route? My instincts screamed at me to break free from his grip and investigate, but could I take that risk? Then, a low growl echoed from the depths of the tunnel. I turned slowly to face the direction we'd come. The creature's growl mixed with the sound of shuffling, and I knew it wasn't far behind us. Run! Jake shouted, pulling me along, and we dashed further into the tunnel. The pulsating glow faded as we sprinted through the tight space, and I felt panic steal over me. Only darkness lay ahead, and we had nowhere to hide, but then, that unsettling thought returned. What if the creature wasn't just stalking us from behind? What if more awaited us up ahead? As we raced forward, I began to doubt the light and the tunnel. What if it trapped us just the same? My breath quickened. I wasn't ready for whatever lay ahead, but there was no turning back. The walls narrowed, making it harder to run. And just when I thought we could go no further, the passage opened into a vast chamber. My stomach dropped. That's when I saw it. It was a massive, circular chamber, pulsating with the same sickly green glow that had beckoned me earlier. Jagged rock formations adorned the chamber's edges, and in the center, a swirling vortex of light expanded and contracted like a breathing entity. My gut twisted in fear. This wasn't just any tunnel, it felt like the heart of the submarine, and the glow was alive, almost sentient. What the hell is this place? Jake whispered, his voice barely a breath as we stood in awe. Without a word, I approached the edge of the vortex and felt the warmth radiating from it. But it was uneasy, somehow inviting while simultaneously warning us to stay back. It has to lead somewhere, I said, half to myself and half to Jake. Maybe it's a way out. But before Jake could answer, the growls emerged again, echoing through the chamber. My heart raced. It was closer now, the creature not far behind us. We need to decide, now. I shouted, urgency clawing at my voice. Are we jumping in, or are we fighting whatever that thing is? Jake looked torn. What if this doesn't take us anywhere? He asked, fear etched on his features. I didn't have time to contemplate that possibility. Better than waiting to be eaten. He nodded, resolute, and together we stepped toward the vortex, the whirling light beckoning us into its depths. It felt wrong and right all at once. With one final look behind us, we lunged forward, plunging into the swirling energy. Time lost all meaning as we fell. The darkness enveloped us, and the noise of chaos faded, replaced by a soothing hum that stroked my senses. Flashes of light flickered around us, moments of our lives at childhood home, laughter shared, the ocean waves crashing against the shore. But then, just as quickly, everything faltered, dissolving into a sea of confusion, and then, silence that I blinked, dazed and disoriented, finding myself sprawled across a smooth, hard surface. The air felt different, fresher, cleaner, yet I remained breathless as panic surged. My heart hammered in my chest. "Jake!" I called, panic rising. No response. I scrambled to my feet, eyes scanning my surroundings. That I was alone in a dimly lit control room, nothing like the one we had just escaped. The walls were lined with unfamiliar screens and devices, and the hum of machinery was absent. The floor felt more stable beneath my feet. "Jake!" I shouted again, but all I received was an unsettling silence in return. With a deep breath, I marched toward a window looking out into a vast ocean. Sunlight gleamed down, illuminating the azure waves beyond. The submarine was nowhere in sight. Confusion turned to a chill creeping up my spine. Had we truly escaped? Then the whispers returned, faint yet distinctly clear, rising from the shadows around me. "You found us, but will you stay?" Those words coiled in my mind as I stumbled back from the window. I needed to know what had happened to Jake, where he was, if he had made it through that vortex too. Everything moved as if it were a half-remembered dream, leaving me unsure of what was real. The memories of the creature, the chaos, those terrible whispers lingered like shadows at the edge of my thoughts. That it was hard to shake the feeling that whatever I had escaped hadn't truly let go. I could still hear them, the voices of the crew. Jake, perhaps they lingered, trapped in the depths, or maybe something far worse was still on the prowl. That I still think about it sometimes, that submarine lurking in the depths of the ocean, waiting for someone else to come aboard. I've never gone back to sea since then. I wonder if the glow is still alive somewhere in the dark, waiting for another curious soul to step aboard and unveil the secrets hidden below the waves. But mostly, I try not to think about it.